I've worked for 30 years, 17 in the private sector and 13 in the public sector on transport strategies, smarter choices, economic development, and smart cities. I led Smart Ipswich for 3 years before becoming a consultant and working with several cities. What I'm going to talk to you this morning about is ways of perhaps unlocking some of the public sector challenges and partnership working with them. Just an overview of what I'll be talking about is really trying to understand the public sector, because working with any partner, it's best that you understand some of their drivers and motivations, some of their challenges and opportunities for ways of collaborating with them, a reflection on some of the smart demonstrators that are existing at the moment, future partnership opportunities, how British Standards and others are helping collate best practices and share that, and useful resources for you, and are touching on some funding opportunities that can help accelerate activities. Now, public sector thinking. I'm a Bart Simpson, I suppose, but there are many Barts in the world in all walks of life. But to understand really sort of what's going on in people's heads, and I think some of the earlier speakers today mentioned that sometimes thinking is different. If you're thinking about data, for example, you don't think about the end use, you think about the data itself. So when looking at the public sector and thinking about the ways they think, what are the learnings we can understand? What are their drivers and motivations? It's really important that we start to think around what's going on in their heads. Now, the public sector has used smarter choices and behavioural economics reasonably effectively to encourage the public to consider healthier ways of living, alternative ways of travelling, for example, recycling, various different initiatives. And I do wish that they would take some of their own medicine at times. And having worked on these campaigns within the public sector, I can reflect back and go, well, why aren't you actually doing this? Some of the strategic issues that they're facing, and we've spoken a bit about governance and having politicians sway decisions from officers that may provide all the evidence to them. I don't want to go through this in too much detail here, but just to reflect on the fact that the public sector is intrinsically risk adverse through its culture and its background. They're under extreme financial pressures at the moment through austerity. They've got challenges to face up to, and it's how we can potentially help them with that. There are issues around ageing population. We've heard about adult social care, and I'll come back to that as well. They are restricted in their ability to undertake speculative developments unless there's a clear, demonstrable return on investment for them. It's very difficult for them. Now, looking at some of these issues that they face up to, I reckon about half of those are external facing, or at least should be. Yet their behaviours are very introverted. Why is that? How can we break that? Here are some of the other challenges. I mean, some councils are now looking at divesting services. They're looking at generating revenues from services to supplement their budget gaps. They're releasing assets such as land, property, and these could be great development opportunities for this sector. But also other services like car parks, theatres and leisure. They're looking at new models and ways of generating those revenues. Looking in the middle, they are open to partnership development and new ways of market shaping. The bottom section here is all about keeping the lights on. Keeping the current services running, and it is about efficiency. It's about efficiency of resources, whether that's their buildings and assets, physical assets, or the staff. How can we empower them and perhaps use better data from citizens and people living and working in city environments to help inform decision making and be more effective? Moving on. Here are some of the challenges. Now, these are broken into various themes. You'll notice many of them are infrastructure themes, but there are a lot of soft issues. And the top one I've put there, and it's come up before earlier from Andrew and others, is about health and well-being. The cost of social care in Suffolk, for example, is over 40% of their budget, around £200 million a year. With an ageing population, that cost is increasing, but they don't have the revenue to address the cost. So how can we help and use new systems, new Internet of Things type services and data to support the carers? And we'll come back onto that. The economy is also a big issue for local authorities, especially now with devolution, and some leading authorities are able to keep a percentage of business rates. So it is in their interests to grow the local economy, because some of that economy will pay for the public services that we all consume. What I would suggest is, if you can help address some of their top challenges and issues and build the trust and the ways of working with them, you can then start to get into the other nitty-gritty longer-term issues, such as long-term planning, transport, etc., the public realm, housing. Now, to reflect back on some of the future cities and demonstrators, in 2012, Innovate UK, hands up here, how many have heard of Innovate UK or worked with them, applied for funding? So about half of the audience. Okay. Well, they've run competitions to find a city demonstrator. Glasgow won. There were 3 runners-up that won a couple of £1 million each. Glasgow won about, I think it was 12 million. It was just before the Commonwealth Games, and it was used for CCTV and some of the management of the games. There have been other demonstrators going along. Milton Keynes won the Transport Systems Catapult, and we're going to hear something about Milton Keynes, or some of their data that we've heard about earlier. There is a useful report, and I've got a slide at the end with resources about these city demonstrators and what they've achieved and what some of the challenges were. Also, Hypercat. Now, how many of you have heard of Hypercat? Okay, a reasonable number. For those who haven't, Hypercat was developed following an early Internet of Things call to look at the interoperability of data. And we've heard earlier about this issue of combining different data sets and making it more usable. Now, Hypercat, I will come on to about some of the activities that Hypercat are involved in. But it is a standard around interoperability. Now, there are another 150 local authorities in the UK that don't have smart city strategies or action plans or resources. So there's a huge opportunity. There are about 30 here on the slide. It's unbalanced, and we need to move this forward. The IoT demonstrator bid was won last year by Manchester in the City Verve project, and that is a big project to look for. Actually, just before moving on, I should mention that none of these cities would claim, even London, that they are a leading example of a smart city, that they have achieved nirvana. They're not there yet. We're all on a journey, and it's a long one to take. Excuse me. So Hypercat, just to sort of break Hypercat down for you, to explain it a bit better, at the bottom, sort of building up from the bottom, you've got building information modelling, information sets, smart cities, data, Internet of Things. This is all around devices that could be out there, and we've heard loads of statistics about devices and how many there could be and how many are anticipated to be delivered. But those devices feed into gateways, and those gateways moves into the cloud, as we've heard earlier, where you can store the data, analyze the data. And Hypercat tries to bring this together and simplify so that you can develop user applications more easily, and you can get to market far quicker. Now, this is also underpinned now by the British Standards Institute. We'll hear more about that. But Hypercat has run several spearheads to test this modelling on infrastructure systems predominantly. And I think some of the members of BSI who are here today would agree that some of those demonstrators were technical feasibility studies. But they are keen now to accelerate the use of the Hypercat standard into the city environment, and I'll come back onto that, to unlock the inertia that I was telling you earlier about cities' reluctance to invest in speculative developments. A little more about the business case for interoperability. McKinsey have shown that there is real value. It's adding 40% growth to Internet of Things by allowing systems to interoperate more effectively. But there are loads of other statistics as well. People are speculating that there could be 34 billion devices by 2020, and that could be 4 per person on the planet. Yet other people are saying in the advanced Western world, we could need up to 26 sensors per person, from smart devices through to all sorts of sensors around the home and our built environment. These are huge numbers. There are predictions that the value of smart cities could be worth around $3.5 trillion within 10 years. And that there will be a 2 times return on investment within that period as well. So why aren't the cities investing enough? Now, other partnerships in cities and large towns include, for example, business improvement districts. Business improvement districts are private sector run. They add value and vision to their locality, and businesses are voluntarily paying more through their business rates for value-added services that they're not getting through their public sector partners or suppliers or local authorities. We have other people as well, like the local enterprise partnerships, the chambers, universities, that are trying to move their local area forward. You've got reports that are out there, like the Grimsey Review, Mary Portas Review, about trying to revitalise town centres and city centres to bring people into those centres and make them more user-friendly and to counteract online shopping and out-of-town shopping, for example. All of these issues really come together around sort of understanding your local partners. They are very diverse. I believe there are about over 200 bids in the UK now and growing. It's a model that we've copied from the States. One of the key things I've come across is that local bids are really interested in this mobile data, providing mobile access for their citizens and visitors to a city about how to find their way around and to improve the customer experience of a city if you managed it almost like a shopping centre but at city scale. And it also helps the investors that we've heard from earlier about sort of footfall mapping and sort of heat mapping of where people are moving and the value of those individuals. I'm going to give you a quick tour through a project which was around sort of mobile ticketing going back about 7 years ago, anticipating this convergence of sort of mobile payments, mobile information. And this was about delivering buying bus tickets on your mobile phone, pre-smartphone or just around the advent of smartphones. They've been doing this in the Far East for nearly 20 years. In fact, I've heard that when people move from the Far East or come on holiday to the UK, they're issued with something called a credit card because they're used to paying on their mobile. It's only with the advent of some of the recent smartphone devices that you can now do that in the UK. But this device was to scan in barcodes or chips on your phone or smart cards. I mean, smart cards aren't really smart. They're pretty dumb and they're plastic and you have loads of them. Why can't you get rid of them? This project was about bringing that together with local information so you can plan your journeys and provide rewards and incentives. And my point here is about that local authorities are very used to working in partnerships with quite a wide range of different partners. This was all around smarter choices, smarter travel choices, around sort of business travel, commuting travel, travel to work, leisure, education. But to simplify all of this, thankfully, British Standards Institute have started to capture some of the best practices and have documented a whole range of city standards. And if you haven't already looked at these, I would highly recommend you do. There's a whole range here, as you can see, from sort of what is a smart city through to sort of how you might structure data. And this also feeds into the HyperCat PAS 212 model. The City Standards Institute that runs out of the Future Cities Catapult is running city standards conformance assessment programs. The public sector aren't really, I've mentioned 150 local authorities don't have smart city strategies. Maybe this is an opportunity for the private sector to go in and advise them on developing their strategies and working with them. We're going to hear an example about OPDC shortly that run through a very well-structured program with Hypercat around the issues to develop up their strategies. Now, British Standards Institute are now the owner of Hypercat. Hypercat came through, was developed by Innovate UK funding initially, and had a huge consortium and an alliance. David Cookow is here from Hypercat, the Hypercat Global Alliance. There are now over 400 organisations that are members of this alliance. Hypercat is developing a Hypercat City program to try to accelerate the adoption of Internet of Things and smart cities. And we've identified a cluster of accelerator cities, and you're going to hear from one of the wannabes, Oxford, shortly, on how we can pick up on the challenges, some of the cities that haven't yet won the funding from Innovate UK and other groups. But these cities really want to move forward and address some of their local challenges. And we're suggesting let's focus on some of those challenges, work with universities and other businesses and prove some value through some small test beds, but ideally start off with aiming to deliver return on investment, demonstrable return on investment, because this will allow the local authorities to go, right, if that really provides a good return, we'll invest. So it should open up their checkbooks and they should be delivering invitations to tender to the private sector. So just touching on some of the funding opportunities that might help fuel this and accelerate it. I mean, clearly you've got PFI opportunities, you've got the private sector institutions that are out there, banks and others that can invest. Local enterprise partnerships do have a lot of funding to accelerate growth around jobs. It's mainly infrastructure based, so that will clearly fit with the sort of BRE type audiences. Local authorities are cash rich and revenue poor, I think it's fair to say. They can access capital for long-term projects, but as you've heard with services such as adult social care, they need the revenue to be able to keep the lights on. Interestingly, the enlightened few, are using some of the business rates funding to pay the loans on capital interest. And that's allowing them now to invest in new developments. One thing I'd like to pick out here is the Innovate UK competitions. There's currently a call, Innovation in Infrastructure Systems, which is worth £15 million, closes at the end of March, or March the 22nd, broken into two streams, a £5 million pot and a £10 million pot. The £5 million is for projects 25k to 100k from 3 months to a year. The £10 million pot is for projects from 100k to £5 million and can be from 1 year to 3 years in length. I would highly recommend you consider bidding for that funding to accelerate these opportunities with cities and form consortia. And in fact, Hypercat are looking at running something around the city programme. So if you are interested, I'd highly recommend you speak to David Cookow in ways that you can join the alliance. It's moving into a subscription-based service where members will get benefits from the subscriptions to get these sorts of projects running that they can see tangible results from. I'm just wrapping up now. So I would recommend that a good way of developing partnerships between the private sector and the public sector is to focus on the challenges, be challenge-led, collaborate with like-minded businesses within your sector, and also with groups like the British Standards Institute and Hypercat, and with local authorities to address their issues. If you can demonstrate return on investment, it should lead to procurement opportunities. And why not use all the standards and best practices that are out there? This will help you get there quicker. I've left you with some resources here, some various links that you can, I believe these slides will be available afterwards, that you can link through to, various reports, the Innovate UK opportunity, something on nudge and behavioural economics as well, because that might give you insights into helping local authorities make decisions. And that's me. Thank you very much.
Cheers, Peter.